Hey guys, this is Sketch here. This video is going to be a little different. I've been contemplating making this video for a little while now. To tell you the truth, I'm a little bit nervous about it. And the reason is it's a bit of a touchy subject that I'm not really used to talk about. And it's the subject of chronic pain. A lot of people don't know that I've had chronic pain for over 10 years now. It's something I don't really talk about much because it's a difficult subject to talk about and it's not very well understood. And I guess that's part of the reason I wanted to make this video today is just maybe share a little bit of my story, share a little bit of understanding. And I don't know if I want to make more of these videos yet. Maybe if you guys have some questions, then I might make more, So I don't really have a script for this, so I hope this won't turn into too much of a rant. I don't want this video to turn into just one big complaint because that's just not what I want to do. So I'm going to start with just, I guess, explain my situation a little bit. So I've had chronic neck and back pain for about 12 years now. It is frustrating sometimes, I'll admit that, and it's been very difficult. It's been a very difficult adaptation for me. And I just want to tell you a little bit about my story. It's been a difficult road. It's been a difficult adjustment. I've had to change a lot of things in my life. I've had to change my exercise routines, my daily routine in general, actually. I've had to be, a lot more careful about my posture, about certain movements that I do and, how I do them. And, I always try to, as much as I can, I try to sit a lot straighter and, I try to move around a little bit, which it might actually make me seem a little fidgety, because I try to change my posture every now and then just so the same muscles there aren't, overworking all the time. One of the questions people often ask me, when I talk about this is, well, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with your back? What's wrong with your neck? And it's actually a very difficult question to answer because I do have a diagnosis. I was diagnosed with what they call Scheuermann's disease, which essentially is a changing in the shape of some of my vertebrae, and it's causing basically my spine not to function the way it should function. My joints aren't functioning very smoothly anymore. This is in the upper back area. But that's not the entire answer, because truth is that every person reacts differently to the same conditions. It's not a one-to-one correlation between the condition that you have and the pain that you feel. I've had some sports injuries, which I believe play a role into this also. I've had some rib injuries. I've had some neck injuries. In fact, I didn't feel any pain up until I injured my neck by just a stupid fluke accident where I hit my head on a ceiling that was much too low for me to stand under. And from that point on, the pain just spread and never left. That was the start of it. And it was also the reason it was very difficult to explain to doctors because, basically right off the bat, I would tend to get discredited because I would say, well, I've been hurting since I hit my head, and then they tell me when there's nothing wrong with it. You don't have a concussion, you don't have anything, you have no reason to have all this pain, right? And I've actually had a lot of difficulty working with doctors. They're actually not very well trained in musculoskeletal problems. I don't think I pronounced that right. Especially the spine. There's a lot that we don't know about the functioning of the spine. And everybody has a little piece here and there, like physical therapists and chiropractors and osteopaths. They all have little pieces of the puzzle, and unfortunately, they don't work together to put them all together. They all tend to stick to their own view and their own discipline and their own way of doing it. It's very hard to get a comprehensive view of what's actually going on with your body. And unfortunately, this whole stigma surrounding chronic pain in general, where a lot of people just, I guess they think we're faking, or since everybody has had some form of back pain or neck pain or headaches or, you know, some form of pain in their life, what the average person doesn't always understand is that after a while, it's a summation of it all that takes a toll on you. You know, you spend one bad day with a headache or with a backache, and it's not really much of a problem. You know, you think, well, I'll just do more the next day. It doesn't really matter. You know, but when it's just repetitive, day after day after day after day, it gets really hard emotionally. You know, you get a lot of fatigue. You can get depressed. I also have some anxiety issues because of, you know, what I feel that I can do and what I feel that I can't do, and how much energy I think I have to put into daily work, for example. And so it has a lot more impact than just, you know, the pain itself. And just that is a whole part of the story that most of the time doctors don't listen to. You know, the whole part about how it makes me feel to not be able to play hockey anymore, or how it makes me feel to not play in a band anymore. I had to quit the band after some time because I didn't feel like I could keep going. And it's changed, you know, my practice habits, and actually there was a whole period in time where I didn't know if I could actually continue playing, because I was actually recommended to stop playing because it's a difficult posture to maintain for your back. I hope you can imagine my despair at thinking that I was never going to play guitar again. One thing that people often say when I tell them that I have some back issues is they'll tell me, oh, go see my chiropractor, or go see my osteopath, go see my physical therapist, you know, he'll fix you right up. And there was a time when I didn't really know how to answer to that, and it would actually frustrate me because I have gone to see chiropractors and I have gone to see osteopaths, and, you know, I've seen actually several different physical therapists. And everybody basically has a story where they say, oh, my back was hurting, I went to see this guy, he cracked me up a couple of times, and I've felt better ever since. It seems that, you know, if you tell people, well, I've already tried chiropractors and, you know, they haven't really helped me out, and they can't help me out because I don't have a condition that can be fixed with chiropractic, there's like a certain lack of belief, you know, there's like a certain expectancy from people that you are going to take their advice, and if you don't, you know, the complaint is discredited. It's the same thing I've had with some doctors. I've seen some specialists, and, you know, every doctor has tried to send me back to physical therapy. That's usually step one. I was referred to once to a physiatrist, and first thing she said was, well, we have a physical therapy clinic here, you know, take some appointments, and, you know, we have a special high voltage treatment, you know, that's going to get your muscles moving and make you feel all better, you know. And I had already had, you know, high voltage treatments, and I had already seen at that point, you know, several different physical therapists, and when I tried to explain that to her, it was like an admittal of guilt, as if I was guilty of not trying hard enough. Which is what, unfortunately, a lot of doctors seem to think with you know, chronic pain patients, is basically you're not trying hard enough. You know, I've been working with a new doctor, a new family doctor, a GP, because my old GP left, and I've had to explain to her, you know, the whole process over again. Basically, she replied, "Have you tried an occupational therapist?" And the truth is, I haven't. I know that, you know, they're supposed to help you out with, you know, your posture at work and all that stuff, but, you know, truth is, I don't think my pain is occupation related. Granted, I do feel pain at work. I work at a desk, and yes, it's difficult for me because I have to sit still and type at a computer, and sometimes I have to lean in and squint, and sometimes I have to, you know, lean over a book, and those are all things that put some strain on my spine because they keep me from that, you know, that good posture. And, you know, when I told her, well, I haven't tried occupational therapy, but I do have a very good physical therapist, and he's been teaching me about posture, and he's helped me get an exercise program and a stretching program and all that stuff. So I don't think I need an occupational therapist to just tell me the whole thing all over again. You know, I think there's a lot of overlap between some of these disciplines, and I think my physical therapist is really great, and he's helped me out a lot, and he's brought me a long way, and I wouldn't want to, you know, change therapists and you know, throw something else into the mix. because I already do think I have a great physical therapist, and I think let's say the level of occupation I can do today is a lot thanks to him. And when I tried to explain that to her, again, it was the same reaction. It was like an admittal of guilt, and she said, "So you haven't tried everything yet?" And that's very frustrating from a patient's point of view, to be told by your doctor, well, it's basically your fault. And that's what it feels like. And that's essentially one of the reasons I also very much dislike doctors. I have a very poor relationship with doctors because of this. Truth is, yeah, I've had a very difficult road, and at first, I didn't know what to do, and I admit I've probably made a lot of wrong choices, especially in the beginning. The adaptation for me was extremely difficult. I'll be the first to admit I went through basically the how many stages of grief there are. I was angry, I was depressed, I went in denial. Basically the whole 9 yards. I went through all of them until finally I accepted. It took me a couple of years, but I accepted that I was going to have to work really hard to get myself healthy again, and that doctors or chiropractors or anybody, nobody was the solution except for me. And that's a very hard thing to understand for the person that is suffering. It's not really in our culture anymore to have to work towards our well-being. Except maybe financially. That's a whole different story. Another subject I could tackle on is the way pain affects the way you deal with your environment. Environment as in other people as well. It really has changed the way I interact with people. And a lot of this has to do with just the fact that you can't tell my condition by looking at me, or you can maybe if you're really observant. You'll notice that my posture isn't quite right, and I often look tired and maybe a little bit slow, but then there's 1,000 reasons why that could be the case. I might just look lazy. People just don't know. Pain is invisible. I don't have a missing limb. I'm not in a wheelchair. I don't have scars. And I think that makes it very hard to understand for people that there might be something wrong with me, For example, I often get looks on the bus if I decide to sit in the first seat in the front, especially if there's an elderly person that walks in immediately after me. And this has happened before. This has actually happened somewhat recently. There was a lot of empty spaces on the bus. I just happened to pick one of the very early seats that was available, and this elderly lady comes up to me, and she doesn't actually ask for me to give up my seat, which if she had, I probably would have. She kind of just stands over me and stares at me with this condescending look, like, what a lazy bum, Of course she has no idea that my back is very much hurting at that point, and I just took the first seat available that I saw. But after a few seconds of having her, glaring at me like this, I got up and went a couple seats down, and that's it, But exactly, people don't know, and it's something that changes the way you interact with people. I'm in my late 30s. I look like I'm in relatively good shape, and people expect me to behave like the average, man for that age, with all of the strengths that are supposed to come with, being an adult male. For example, if I do the groceries with my girlfriend, they won't hand the bags over to my girlfriend. They'll hand them over to me, which is okay. I don't get in people's faces about it, and I don't use pain as an excuse to not do my share of the work. I think that's also another important trap not to fall into, and I think it's what makes people very suspicious, is that unfortunately some people do use pain or the possibility of pain as a reason to either not work, or have certain social advantages, or to just not do their share. I guess I'm pretty sure it happens. And again, you can't verify it. You can't verify pain. I've had the chance with my physical therapist to really explore how do my joints function with each other, and how has my movement been affected, and it's been really effective in relearning to do a lot of the daily things, and to know what it is I'm supposed to strengthen, and what I need to stretch and what I need to be careful with. And that's a whole part that, unfortunately, doctors, even back specialists, cannot do, because that's not what they're trained for. I think if every practitioner had a better complete picture of how does the body function and how does pain arise, then it would be much easier to get the proper treatment. But unfortunately, that's not the case today. That being said, I should probably put this as a disclaimer that I don't claim to have actual medical knowledge. I did not study medicine. I did not study any kind of physical therapy or any other of the disciplines. I am an engineer. But I do think that as an educated person, I have the ability to look for my own answers and to make up my own models in my head. I'm also seeing a psychologist for the emotional side of pain and the emotional side of suffering in general. I guess I could open a little parenthesis here that suffering is not the same as pain. Pain is an actual physical sensation, but suffering has an emotional component to it, and you can be in pain and yet not suffer. And a good example of that is if you're playing any kind of high-level sport, you'll probably be sore all over, but you're not going to be suffering. You'll just be in pain and yet still be content about the pain. You'll feel like you've actually accomplished something, and that pain is good in a certain sense. So anyway, I just wanted to make that little distinction. So yeah, I've been seeing a psychologist also for the past couple of years, because there's a lot of frustration that comes with any kind of chronic condition. The realizing that your body isn't operating the way you want it to, and the realizing that it means that some of your goals and some of your expectations are going to have to change. It's actually a very difficult process. I've lost some people in my life. I've lost a relationship that I had at the time. I do not want to blame her for this whatsoever. I'll be the first to admit that I've made some mistakes, that I was not equipped to handle my condition at first, and I didn't know what to do. I was frustrated, I was depressed, and it must have been very hard for her, and I can understand why she decided to opt out of it. That being said, I am now in another relationship. Now that I understand myself and my condition a lot better, I can react in certain ways that don't put so much strain on her. Because I'll be the first to admit that it's very difficult to be with somebody who's suffering and who may not be doing what they should be doing to help themselves. And that was my case at the beginning. I do worry about my ability to perform my work to the standards that are expected of me. A lot of people I see on a daily basis probably don't know that I have chronic pain. I haven't told my coworkers just because I think it's something personal, and I don't want to get everybody involved. So I don't know what they think or what they know. Obviously they see me, stretching, and they'll see me doing, a few yoga poses during my lunch break, and maybe some of them think it's weird. Maybe some of them just think I'm a little zealous. I don't know. Frankly, I haven't asked. But yeah, it can cause some misunderstandings. Sometimes I have bad days and I have trouble focusing, and probably, my boss or whoever, they don't necessarily know why it's difficult for me that day to just get my stuff done, And so I try to not focus on that, and I think I've already blabbed enough about this for one day. There's lots more than I can say. There's tons that I can say, because essentially it's 10 years worth of life that I could talk about. I think for now, for just one video, I can end it at that. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. I'll try to answer as best as I can. So thanks for listening. I hope I'll hear from you guys, and maybe I'll do this again sometimes.